there any questions or follow-ups from that first session before we kick off into our second session? If there isn't, just give me a good to go, thumbs up, reaction to let me know everybody's still following along. Okay, don't see any reactions or thumbs up. I'm going to assume that we're still good to continue on. I don't see any questions there. Microphone's on, yep, okay. So the idea here is to, as I mentioned, to think about, what services are you offering, what differentiation, what real value are you providing above and beyond what, is already out there and is what is the de facto standard or the dial tone which is out there. Now, the idea with all of these products is to look at it and come at it from a customer benefit. Like I said, customers don't care about the technology. Customers will only see technology as a cost and let you help them understand the value of it, right? So again, what is the value of a car? The car allows you to have the freedom to come and go. It gives you the ability to travel further than you could in a day. That's the value add of it, right? So yes, there's a cost to achieving that, both in purchasing and maintenance, but what is the value that it provides? And again, if it wasn't of value, then why do we have so many cars? And many people have 2 or 3 in their family. So again, the idea here is to look at it as what is the customer benefits. So if we go through those quickly, you'll see that with Microsoft 365, you're going to get your familiar desktop applications so the users can use those. They've got up to 15 installs, so they can install 5 on a PC or a Mac, 5 on a tablet, and 5 on a mobile device. So they do have 15 installs. The way that you see most of the items licensed these days is per user. So again, the idea is that a user may have up to 5 devices typically, and the license will cover them for up to 5 devices, including any virtual devices as well. So the idea is to bring all that data into a central location, allow the company to control it and manage it. So typically what we've seen is that, employees have data on their desktop in their My Documents, they leave, that data is no longer available to the business, or they, do stuff with the data that the business didn't authorize. They haven't had a lot of control over that. So we can reverse that using the Microsoft 365 technologies. We've also got the ability to easily connect with people inside and outside the organization to all work on the same page, share the same sort of tools, and communicate quickly and easily on any mobile device. Now, we're also seeing the move into, AI being one of those buzzwords, those catchphrases, but it's certainly beginning to make its impact in many of the products. That is a go-to-market strategy you could use, talking to customers about, the AI capabilities that Microsoft is introducing around its products. So one of the things, for example, that this Teams meeting is providing, it's automatically doing the transcription as well as recording. So once that transcription is complete, then obviously what's the benefit of transcription? It's all going to be searchable. So again, I can now search to that location of that phrase, and then I can click on that and it'll take me to that location in the video so I can catch up from that point forward. So again, the idea here is make sure that you are showing your customers, or your customers appreciate that you are keeping abreast of all the technologies that are being made available, and that they should come and talk to you about it. You don't want an interloper to go into your customer and show them a few things that you may not have got around to showing them, and then taking the business from you. So it's very, very important to make sure that you are across all of these capabilities. And remember, look at it from the customer's point of view. The customer doesn't care that, they've got this technical capability, but they may really love something which technically doesn't appear to be much. But the idea here is, what is the value in the customer's eyes? So we've got the ability, to sync data, to work from anywhere, to work online, to work offline, to work in any device, and to do that, again, securely. And all of that requires, some IT capability to go and set up, right? Most customers are not going to do it. No wizard's going to do it for them. It really requires the skills of an IT provider to provide those capabilities and really add that value and enhance that product. And that's always the way it's going to be. How many Windows servers will run up and just left as is? Well, no, very few. They're all customized, they're all optimized, and made available, in the best way possible for customers. Same thing today. But the idea is the focus shifts away from doing infrastructure to additional options and value adds. Now, the idea with this cloud environment is going to be now it is possible for someone to deploy a complete environment, including workstations, with a script. Okay, so we can now set up a script that would create a tenant, would add licenses, would add the users, would provision their capabilities, create management policies, and even create virtual machines using Windows 365 and roll that out to a customer. So that is what is possible today. You could deploy a complete environment virtually without ever seeing the customer, without ever seeing any device. So that's the level of management that is possible today with the inbuilt Microsoft tools, without the need for any third-party tools at all. So all of those capabilities are available today. All of these security capabilities are available today. But again, the idea here I would suggest is look what the services provide you out of the box before you look and go and add on third-party products, because 99 times out of 100, the third-party product isn't required. It's already part of the Microsoft 365 environment and just simply needs to be configured. So hopefully we're all across, email, scheduling, chat. We're all comfortable with Outlook, so I'm not going to dwell there. Also going to talk about, what you get with things like Word, Excel, PowerPoint on the desktop. Remember that they get updated every single day, every single month. So there's an opportunity for you to go and talk to your customers and say, look, you've got new features in PowerPoint, in Word and Office. Did you know about this? And the cost to them is zero. They're getting more for what they're already paying. That's the benefit of subscription. So if you're not reinforcing the benefits the subscription's providing, then the customer looks at it and says, well, why should I keep paying for this? I don't see it getting any better. I don't know it, because they're not going to go and have a fiddle. They need to get their job done. So the idea here is to make sure the customers understand the value of the subscription that you are providing. And part of that is new features, updates, improvements on a regularly recurring basis. Now, one of the technologies that I don't see regularly used or shown to customers is technologies like, Delve. So if you haven't seen Delve, basically what it is think of Delve like a search engine for your environment here. So for your Microsoft, and why isn't it there? For your, basically your tenant here. Interesting. Seems to have disappeared here. That's interesting. C, D, they're in alphabetical order. Interesting. Let me try another. One here to see whether it's been changed. So the idea here is, it's interesting, it's on this one. So let me bring it down. For some reason, it doesn't appear in that one. So you'll see here that what Delve's going to give me is basically a search engine capability across all my data. So the idea here is I can use the old Google style method and do a search here, and that's going to search all the content that I have access to, maintaining my securities, and then it's going to find any matches. It's going to give me a preview, and then I can, if I click on this, it's going to take me directly to any matches that I have there, open the file, and I can start working. Now, the other way that you can search information, which I like to call the Facebook approach, is that the information that is relevant to you is presented in a feed here. So this feed that Delve maintains, it looks at what documents you work on and others that you interact with work on. It will present you with a feed of documents here based on their relevancy to you. Now, I can go up here and say, you know what, I was working on an Excel diagram here, and it's now going to filter that list and only show me Excel information. Now you'll see here, this one here, Lewis Collins OneDrive for Business. Why does that show up? Well, Lewis has obviously shared that file with me. And again, if I click on this, you'll see that it will take me to that actual location. This is the information that has been shared with me. So the second option here is to look at being able to find documents based on relevancy. And most people only work on half a dozen to a dozen common documents a day. Now, the third option I've got here is to actually look at what my colleagues are working on. So think of this like the social search. So the idea is okay, if I work with Lewis and I know Lewis is working on a budget, do I have access to that? Here it is. Remember, this is all security trimmed. It's only showing me what I have access to, and now I can get access to that file. All right, and this is the idea. It's about discovering the information or it being presented to you rather than going through F drive, folders, budgets, Lewis, 2021. No, not there. Maybe it's in 2020. Maybe it's in 2019. So again, the idea here is to be as productive as possible using technologies like search. Now we can also take that information and again, we can bookmark it like our internet favorites. So again, if you've got common files you work on or your customers work on, they can bookmark these files and get back to them at any point in time. They don't have to keep navigating through a labyrinth of folders. And we can also extend that with something called boards, which allow multiple users to pin documents to a board and then for that board to be shared with a group of people. So if a user comes in who doesn't have access to Lewis's information, then they will only see my information. So again, it's all security controlled, it's all managed, it's all maintained, and there's nothing you need to do to set up all this with Delve. Delve is already available to you out of the box, and this is one of the really amazing features of Microsoft 365 that very few people seem to be aware of. And again, if I go in and talk to a customer, this is one of the first things I show them to say, look, this is the benefit of a modern approach to working with information. How do you find stuff today? Well, I go into a search engine, I do a search and I click on links. Well, why aren't you doing that inside your business? Delve is a way to do that. And it is capability you can talk to your customers and show them. And again, offer enablement around. Now, we've also got the ability to use pens and inking and drawing, and it can do OCR on that. I have made a major commitment not to have any paper. So every piece of paper that comes in, I use the Office lens that is part of OneDrive. I take a photo of the original, I store that digitally and that's indexed and I have access to it, and the paper one I file and never look at it again. So there is no need, you can go paperless. It is a discipline, I admit, but at the end of the day, I cannot tell you how easy it is now to put my finger on the relevant information or review it or send it to somebody. So all of those capabilities are built into the devices that you have today. And customers are never going to discover those. That's the idea. That's the value add. You can basically go and provide the customer. Say, look, this is enablement training. Look at all these cool things that you can do. It's very simple, but has major customer impact here, right? Now we can, again, work on the go. We've got OneDrive for Business to sync local files, sync SharePoint sites, sync Teams. Microsoft has recently announced that it's going to be you're going to be able to sync lists automatically, so lists of information from SharePoint. So again, all of this is going to be available to you wherever you are, and you can get to and access your documents either on the desktop or in the web at any time on any device. So really, really powerful stuff. But remember, most of these customers aren't aware of this. They've never seen these capabilities. Get in there and show them. When you provide them with a tenant, make sure that they understand they can get to this information in a variety of ways and the benefits it provides them with these new capabilities. So, for example, one of the latest capabilities that Microsoft, or one of a recent capability that Microsoft added to the environment, which, again, many people don't seem to have noticed, is this dictate button here. So if I push that, what it's going to do now, what it would do now is, let's see if I can get it to work. So that's in a virtual machine. So let me run Word on my desktop here. Let's see if that works. So again, you'll notice that dark theme is my production environment. So if I go in here and turn on dictate, so you'll notice here that this is a feature that has been built into Word, and the big benefit is that it's going to save you the need to go in and type every single thought that you have or create a document. So the way that I use something like this is if I'm going to create a blog post or at least get a document started, it is so much easier to have it automatically read my words and build out the document, and then I continue to edit it from there. So again, this capability is built into Word now, and it is an opportunity for you to go and talk to your customers and show them the benefits that they are achieving and getting for free. And these are the productivity ways that you could take advantage of it. So for me, that's a super time saver because I can do that on my desktop. I can do that on my mobile. If I want to start a document, I just do it in voice and just capture all my thoughts as quickly as possible. Then I go and tidy up the formatting or whatever, or outsource it to someone later. So we've got the security. We've got Windows Hello for Business. Basically, biometrics, two-factor built into devices where the camera recognizes you and securely logs you in. We've got the capability to do NFC. We've got the capability to do YubiKeys. We've got conditional access. We've got encryption at rest with things like BitLocker. So again, the security's there. It just needs to be enabled, turned on, and that's where the IT provider comes on, providing those capabilities. Now, an SMB customer is going to need security as much as an enterprise, right? Because they are going to be much more likely to be the targets of a phishing email that is going to get somebody to click on it. So again, how are you going to protect these environments? How are you going to make sure? I cannot believe today there is still ransomware. It's just unbelievable to me because it is so easy to prevent. It is so easy to prevent. But again, the more that it happens, the more opportunity you should look at it and say, well, that's security done incorrectly. There's an opportunity to go and fix this problem once and for all and to apply best practices. And again, if customers won't do best practices, don't want to do MFA, when you need to look at it and say, you know what, if you don't want to conform to our best practices as the industry, as the skilled operator in the industry, then maybe you're not the customer for us. Okay, so I'll go back to that statement about saying no is a great way to make sure and to increase your revenue, because rather than trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, sometimes saying no really jolts the customer into thinking, well, do I really want to do this? Now, if they don't want to do MFA, give them a document that says, I, customer, hereby do waive all my legal rights or whatever, or request for recompensation from the provider because they told me about MFA and I chose not to do it. Rarely will a customer sign a document like that. Okay, so a lot of this is, again, setting standards and adhering to them. And the first set of standards you need to apply is to yourself. We'll talk about that more on the security side, right? How secure is your own organization? Do you conform to best practices? If you don't, then you really need to do so before you go and sell it to customers. So we talked about devices. We've got things like Windows Information Protection. We can wipe information on devices if we need to. We've got the ability to push out applications using Intune. We can deploy, a range of configurations, a range of applications remotely across our whole environment quickly and easily, and integrate all of this together with Microsoft 365 and Business Premium and the tools it already provides out of the box. There's no need to go looking for third-party solutions. They're already baked into the environment. It's just a matter of utilizing them and taking advantage of them. Now, one of the others that we have talked about before on previous sessions is Autopilot. So Autopilot allows you to get that out-of-the-box experience, but for you as IT providers to control that. So you can buy a device from Ingram Direct. You can have that shipped to the customer, and they can run it up, and it can then take the policies and configure itself based on those policies, all from policies that you pushed up into their cloud. So you don't have to, as I said, see the device anymore. This concept of having to buy a device from a distie, get it sent to you, provision it, update it, image it, then repackage it, send it to the customer, that's old world thinking, right? We have the capability to deploy these products directly to our end users without necessarily ever seeing the devices in any way, shape or form from the day they're bought to the day that they're retired. That's the modern approach to device management. And of course, we've got the ability to control our updates. So the recent update to Windows 11 is an opportunity for you to go back and have conversations with your customer about, what do you want, how to look at this, are your devices and are your applications ready? And the idea here is to be a thought leader, to be out there, pushing the limits, pushing the boundaries and saying, look, we can help you do this and help you understand the value to your business. This is what we think. This is how we do it. we're seeing more and more resellers, unfortunately, being Luddites and trying to hold back change, right? If you are in this industry, you're in this industry because it's about change. If change frightens you, this is probably not the industry for you. Of course, that is what IT is all about, always has been, always will be. And that's the nature of the business. And you've got to look at the opportunity that that provides you to go to customers. Yes, it's going to be a challenge because you're always learning, but this is where the revenue is, those people that can do it successfully here. All right, so let me have a look at the question, sir. Okay. What can we do to reduce spamming even after? We'll talk about that in the security presentation. Okay. All right, so George has put in a link there for Ingram Micro's deployment options. Excellent. All right, thank you very much for that. All right, are there any questions on that before we turn our attention to migration of data? Are there any questions on that general overview? We'll come to the security questions. We've got 2 days or 2 afternoons together. Again, the idea here is to give you the overview of all of the capabilities rather than just focusing on one entity, but we certainly will look at security as a major component of that. So if you want to park all those security questions till later on, it will come after this migration session. So again, not far to go. So Raymond's asking, can we buy MDM separately? Yes, you can buy Intune as a standalone license or as part of there's a suite of it, which I can't remember what it's called at the moment. But yes, you can buy it, but why would you? Why do you need standalone? You're better off, again, getting them into Microsoft 365 Business Premium for the integration features. But if you want, you can buy Intune as standalone license or part of the Enterprise Mobility Suite add-on to effectively any SKU. But again, it's going to be far more cost effective if you go to Business Premium, I would suggest. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, so if everybody's happy, again, just got no more questions, give me a thumbs up, good to go, and we will continue on. Okay, so I don't see any reactions, so maybe it's just the Teams thing, so I'll assume that's all good to go. All right, so let's talk about migrating to Microsoft 365. So the important thing to think about is that it's not about migration anymore. Migration is a low-end, low-value service. It can be largely automated out and done by machines, okay? What you need to think about is transformation. You need to have a plan in place to transform the way the customer works and their concept of collaboration and the way they use their technology tools rather than just lifting and shifting data. Because anybody and anything can largely move the data. Ask yourself the question, if you were a customer and someone came in and said, look, I'll move that pile of dirt from there to there, what's the value of that? I'd want it moved from there to there and then a garden made with that dirt. That's what I'm after. I'm not just after someone to move dirt for me. And that's effectively what a migration is these days. So you need to think about, and the value add you need to provide to customers and the service you should be providing is around the transformation. Now that transformation is working with Teams, that is working with OneDrive, it's working on mobile devices. It's doing things like version control. It's using check-in, check-out. It's working in a flat structure rather than a deep structure. And yes, this will take some time for customers and will be something they need to change. But at the end of the day, this is how the tools work best. Tools like Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive do not work best in a deep structure of folders upon folders upon folders like we've seen in file servers. They do not work well like that. They can work, but they won't work as optimally. So again, the part of this is to look at and think about, how do I transform and add value on top of any data move? And that question is around what value are you adding, right? Are you doing the same as what everybody else is? Is your migration offering simply moving data or moving emails from one email system to another? If I wake up on Monday morning as a customer and my email is a bit different, but it looks the same, my perception is, what value have you added? Not a lot. So again, what's the value add in the customer's eyes here? What it is above and beyond, right, what anybody else in the market is doing. And do you have a premium offering? Everybody offers a standard offering. What's a premium offering? Well, a premium offering may be offering to move data plus do things like tenant branding, right? So again, adding the customer's logo, background, JPEGs, colors, right? That may be a premium offering and you charge more for it. The money is made in premium offerings. The money isn't made doing a standard commodity item where the price will be driven to zero. That's not where the profit is going to be, right? The profit is going to be on the value add that people will pay for. Now, if you don't believe me, again, look at all the cars on the road. Different cars are driven by different people with different needs. Some drive generic Toyotas, Commodores, Fords, if they're still available, but other people will drive upmarket cars. Other people want Mercs, and they're prepared to pay more. They're prepared to pay, for different wheels or different colors or, all that sort of stuff. Okay, so the idea here is what's your market? Are you aiming at a market that's a premium offering? And again, that doesn't mean that you provide the same to everybody. You can make good money out of being a very focused premium provider, right? Do you offer the ability to configure policies enablement? Well, let's have an example. A policy and email that you could provide is, what about retention? How long is data retained for? How much data is retained in OST files? When is it archived? Okay, all of those can be standard policies that are customized above and beyond what is out of the box. And what about turning on additional features, right? So again, when you look at things like email, what value can you add? You can add a number of add-ins, plugins that provide additional value, right? It's, again, think about the value. If you're just providing a generic Outlook, anybody can do that. The customer can probably almost do it themselves, right? Now, what about automations? How about going to a customer and saying, you know what, I see that you've got a process where you wait for an invoice to come in and then you detach the invoice and put it in this folder, or send it to this person. Why don't we go in and automate that? Using Power Automate, you can add value to remove the repetitive tasks that customers are doing every day, and that's going to save them money and time, right, over the period. It's very, very easy, very, very simple to do with no additional cost in the product because it's included in there, right? Databases, mobile applications. There's so much that can be done in this environment. So part of this is shifting from a thinking of an infrastructure, mechanic to being a developer. Right? You don't have to be a full-on developer with Visual Studio Code and all those sort of things, but you need to think about getting more software, getting more coding into your environment, because that's where the money is, right? Write once, sell many times. Okay. Providing infrastructure is largely limited to the stuff that you can do. It's a per hour rate. You're never going to make money, right? Large amounts of money in a per hour offering because it's just a limited amount of hours, right? You really want something with scale that you can write once, do once, and sell over and over and over and over again. And that is software. Software is going to give you that capability. And what about training, right? When you learnt to drive, it was pretty nerve-wracking and it was a real struggle. I know it was for me. But having professional lessons and again, helping you understand that you push the clutch in before you change gears is going to prevent that crunching noise. So that's what the value add. If you're using the products, if you understand the products, you can train the customer. You can offer this, again, as part of your premium service or as an add-on. Right, most customers are driving their Microsoft 365 in first gear because they just don't know of all the other features. They don't know there's a clutch that they can pull or put or push into the floor and get to the next gear. Right, that's going to be the value add. We can take your business to the next level, and we can again give you the skills that you need. And again, security is a classic, right? Security is an absolute classic. So We'll get to it, but my question to you is what's your secure score? So when I'm brought in to consult with a customer, the first thing I say to them is, what's your secure score? Right? That's a rating out of 100. Now I say, okay, now go and ask your IT provider what their secure score is. If the reseller's secure score is lower than the customer's, you shouldn't be dealing with that reseller. Okay? So you've got to live the dream, right? If you want to sell security, you've got to live security. You've got to understand security. You've got to conform to standards, and you've got to keep up to date with all this stuff. You can't just talk about it. The amount of resellers I've seen that don't have MFA enabled in their environments is shocking. Okay, so again, the way you stand out from the crowd is you walk the walk. If you're going to sell security, live security and be serious about it. And that is going to mean saying no to a lot of customers who want to cut corners. Now, if they want to cut corners, sign my waiver. Thanks very much. We'll charge you twice as much, or we don't deal with you. Sooner or later, cutting corners on security is going to cost you big dollars, and it's going to get nasty. So again, if you're going to do security, do it seriously. Don't do it part-time. All right? So this is a simple example of all the services, or many of the services that are available today in the package. So you've got things like Visio, you've got things like Power Apps, you've got Power BI, you've got OneNote, right? So there's a OneNote. You could build a OneNote service where you could show people how to use OneNote and help them understand the value it has for collaboration, sharing information, working offline, all sorts of really cool things that OneNote does, but nobody does it. So that gives me an opportunity as an outsider to walk into the business, wow their socks off, and sell them additional services, because it's an opportunity that's left wanting. There's money left on the table there. So all of these options you see, plus a whole range more, are available to you. Should you do all of them? Probably not. Should you pick what you are good at and can charge premium for? Absolutely. Everything else you should look at outsourcing or automating. So if you don't want to do migration, outsource it. Find another person or company that will do the migration for you, or automate it using third-party tools. If you don't do Power BI, find someone who does Power BI and partner up with them and let the customer know, so the third party can't walk in and gazump you by impressing the customer with Power BI skills. So you need to cover all your bases, but you don't have to do all the bases. Okay, but start off with a decision as, you know, what am I good at? If you've got the mindset or experience with coding, maybe Power Apps, Power Automate is the way to go. If you're good with numbers and accounting, graphs and stuff, Power BI is perhaps, you know, the way to go. If you're good with presentations, PowerPoint, Sway, those sort of things, you know, Stream to do videos. Work out what you're good at, and then make sure that that will pay. Right? You don't do what you love. That's a complete fallacy, right? If you do what you love, it probably won't pay, because other people won't pay you to do it. You need to do what you're good at, which you're better at than anybody else in the market, and you charge a premium for it. And remember that there are going to be times when you need to have the discipline to say no. Never, ever has a $500 job turned into a $5,000 job. So if it's a $5,000 job and you go to the customer and say, oh, you know, the customer says, oh, you know, can we do a deal? Can we do this? Can we, you know, we'll make sure we'll pay you $5,000 on the next job. That never, ever happens. You do the $500 job, you get ripped off, and the customer goes to somebody else for the $5,000 job. That's always the way it happens. So again, the discipline is to say, this is what we do, this is what we charge, we have the confidence, we know what we're doing, we provide value. So the strategy when you look at doing a migration is about, okay, what have we got? What files, what folders, what devices, who are the users? Again, map all of that out. You can do that in an automated way. You can do that through using a checklist. But again, go through all this and do a proper discovery. What's happened? What are the audit logs? Even if you're taking over an environment, what are the audit logs? What is the environment? How's it set up? What's turned on? What's turned off? What licenses have they got? Then you can do a staged migration. By staged migration, I mean that you begin to move data. You don't, Friday night, you don't copy all the data up and say Monday morning, it's done, see you later. Because remember, the object here is transformation, not migration or just moving data. You need to have a look at a process of, yes, moving the data, but also training the users and helping them to understand how to work with this environment, how to get the most out of it, how to run a Teams meeting, how to use chat, how to create a channel. They're not going to know that. There's a value add in providing that above and beyond just simply doing infrastructure and moving data. We've also got the ability to do hybrid. So if you want to, you can leave some stuff on-prem. It does become harder, but the idea is if you want to do a hybrid strategy, you could. But the idea should be eventually moving it all to the cloud to get all the benefits. And take the low-hanging fruit first. So by the low-hanging fruit first, what I mean is you don't go and migrate the complete server to a single document library. You would look at the user's documents. You would take their personal documents and move them into their OneDrive. You would take their personal files, move them into their OneDrive. That would be step one. That's an easy option to start moving people to the cloud because the OneDrive is a per user file storage system. The common files you can then look at, okay, how do we have to configure these in Teams, SharePoint, whatever, but that requires some decision and some consulting. Whereas OneDrive, you can practically move immediately. All right, so again, don't try and do the hardest thing first. Build up some brownie points by taking the easy options, and you can automate a lot of these options, OneDrive and so on, using the known folder move capability. Okay. So when you go into an environment, the first thing you should think about is a broadband upgrade. Most customers are on a broadband internet connection, which really they haven't looked at for years. Okay, so you go in and say, look, we can work with your existing incumbent. Don't go in there and say, look, well, that incumbent's hopeless. Let's throw them out and put our job in. Because the customer will say, hang on, the last IT person said that their thing was better than the other people, and now you're telling me that your thing is better than those people. So again, the idea would be to say, look, let us work with your incumbent to see if we can get you a better deal or more throughput, and then potentially upgrade to your own provided solution. But again, in this day and age, more broadband is the winner. More broadband is better than RAM, is better than disk space. It's all about broadband. That's why virtual machines, people make the mistake of saying, oh, I've got an 8 gig machine on-prem, I need an 8 gig machine in the cloud. That is not the case. You can probably halve the infrastructure specs because you're going to get so much more bandwidth when you move into a virtual environment. Okay, so remember that, what's the important thing here? And largely it's going to be about bandwidth. Now that increase in bandwidth probably means a router upgrade. How many customers have you gone to and they've got the $110 Officeworks router special that simply hasn't got the buffers to maintain the throughput? So again, don't go in there and trash it, but say, look, we're going to get better throughput. You're doing more stuff in the cloud. We're going to need something that can handle the capacity. And that applies not only in the office, that applies at home, right? How many people these days have decent, business grade internet connectivity and routers and modems and so on? Well, probably not a lot because they've been forced into their home and they've never had to think about it from a business point of view. So again, there's a service to offer to say, look, why don't we have a look at reviewing all of these people who are working remotely and see if we can improve it? Because again, bandwidth is the winner here. Of course, patch, you've got to make sure things are up to date. Is it Windows 10 Home? Is it Windows 10 Pro? Is it Windows 10 Enterprise? All right, what features, what do we need? Are these things up to date? Should we be putting in Windows 11? New machines will probably come with Windows 11. How do we deal with this? Is the customer familiar with it? There's an opportunity to go in and do training sessions and get people prepared for using Windows 11. All right, so at the end of the day, there are lots and lots of opportunities here to just look at the infrastructure, even if they're working remotely. And of course, you're going to have to go in and look at the data. Right? Where's the data? What is it? Is it going to need to be restructured? Is it in the right place? Does it make sense? How big are the files? Are they big files, little files? If they're architects, they're probably big files. If they're medical people or dentists, there's probably big files. Or are they just Office and PDFs? That's going to have an impact. And then what third-party applications are in there? And then you would then look at your licensing, right? What do we need to achieve our end? Do we enable people for frontline? So frontline licenses don't come with the Office desktop applications. They are a cut down version, but they do provide a lot of the capabilities without significant cost. My advice to you would be is to try and look at standardizing on Business Prem or E5 across everybody. It just makes it so much easier to manage and all the features are there. But you can, if you want, mix and match. And that's where people at Ingram can also assist you working out what is the best mix for your environment. Now, when it comes to data discovery, I would suggest to you that when you look at the data, 25% of the data that's on a file server is crap. And by crap, I mean deletable crap. Right? People just aggregate data. It's like when you build a two-story house with a two-car garage, what does the two-door garage get filled up with? Junk that won't fit in the house, and the cars sit outside on the driveway. So there is a discipline, excuse me, in the digital world as much as there is on-prem or whatever about cleaning up your data. Now, how do we look at old data? Well, you can look at access by, dates, all sorts of things. So again, you can run a tool across the data environment. Say, you know what, this stuff is 5 to 7 years old. We don't need it for business reasons, tax reasons, or whatever. Let's delete it. And I mean delete. I don't mean archive. I mean delete it. Now, that could also be, you know, duplicates of C drives, people's personal DVD collections, all that sort of stuff. Delete it. Okay. Now, the next 25% is the archive stuff that won't be current, but may be required for compliance, tax reasons, or whatever. Now, that archive stuff, you've got two options. You either leave it on-prem, put it on a USB drive, put it on a C drive somewhere, or you upload it into the cloud. Now, the problem with loading it up into the cloud is it will consume space, but it then becomes searchable. So everything you put in the cloud will be searchable. So if you take the archive data, make it read-only, stick it in the cloud, then at least it's searchable for people and they can use that as a basis for anything they create going forward. Now, there are limitations around the space in Teams and Teams and SharePoint. Now, the way to overcome that, I would suggest, is that my recommendation is your admin license, the license you have in your customer's tenant, should be E5. It should be an E5 license with all the best security, Azure AD P2, Defender, everything. You pay for that, and that's part of your management cost to your customers to have a fully licensed admin user who can create Teams, create Power Automate, has a mailbox, has an email address. You roll the cost of that license into what you charge the customer, because remember, we're charging a premium offering. Now, when you do that, an E5 gives you an enterprise version of Office 360 of OneDrive for Business. The enterprise version of OneDrive for Business provides you with unlimited data storage, right? Unlimited data storage. So what you do is you create a folder in that administrator's OneDrive for Business called Archive, and you move all the data into that you want to archive, and then you share that as read-only back to your user environment. That is the cheap and cheerful way to create an archive that people can use. Now, the other options are to stick it in SharePoint. The other option is to put it into Azure SMB file store or whatever. But if you have a customer who has terabytes and terabytes of data because they put all their family photos on there and they don't want to get rid of them, I would suggest that OneDrive for Business is the best option there. Now, once you've separated the deletable data and the archive data, then you're left with roughly 50% of what you started with, which is much less. So you then start migrating from the outsides in. You need to migrate the most current data first, because you've got to get your users using the tools, using the environment as soon as you possibly can. If you put that off and migrate the most current data they're working on last, there's going to be more and more resistance to that change. So my advice to you is you want to do that ASAP, and then again, do the other stuff as you go along the way. So again, in simple terms, delete the old stuff and the unwanted data. And it's easy to identify that. Duplicate stuff is another example. Archive, typically by date. Move the data, right? So the idea here is we're doing the Cortez strategy. The idea is you move the data. You don't copy it and leave another copy somewhere. You move it. Means removing it from its source and putting it into the destination. That is the single source of truth going forward. And then you are going to have to restructure. So some data will be moved and left as it is in the structure, in the folder structure, because you're really not going to change it. But this is where the value add comes in, that you're going to say, you know what, maybe we restructure this. You want this in a team, we move this to a SharePoint site, this goes into OneDrive. This is the value add that you provide above and beyond simply moving data from one location to another. Anybody or any process or any bot can move data. How you restructure it, how you rebuild it, how you make it available to people so that it can grow and continue to grow is the real secret, is the real value add here. So the idea is when you go through this move, you need to come up with a process. So the process would be, firstly, work out the structure, right? How many teams, how many SharePoint sites, how many folders, how many channels, what's the structure of this new environment going to look like? Now, that's probably going to mirror very much what the file server was, but it's an opportunity to make sure that you have that right. Maybe you have a team for admin, finance, HR, or maybe you have a team for New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria. This is the value add of providing, this is the way that we should structure our environment. Don't leave it to the customer to work it out. Once you've got the structure, then you need to decide with the customer who has access to what, who has access to this team, who has access to this folder, who has access to this SharePoint site. They're never going to do that. That's a value add you provide, right? Who needs access to that? Is it read, write, change, delete, admin? What rights do they need? That's the value add as an IT provider that you bring to the table with this data, is understanding the concept around permissions. Then tagging the data. Okay, so the idea is to have a very flat structure. The only reason you have people have folders is because they want to tag their data. How many times have you seen a folder called 2021 or 2020 that has the files for 2020? If you could tag them with the tag 2020, then you wouldn't need that folder. So effectively, folders are just a way of tagging or doing metadata. So metadata is data about the information that lives outside that information. So again, think of it, tagging it by year, tagging it by customer. And then once you've done all that, your next option then is, or the next opportunity is to automate, right? So when I finish writing this, what happens with it? Do I automatically email it? Do I send it for approval? How is it handled? How many tasks inside your own business do you keep repetitively doing over and over and over every single day? Because inverted commas, it's always easier or quicker to do that. Sooner or later, automation wins out. Now, once you start automating tasks for customers, guess what? You're going to see a lot of repetition. Oh, that's exactly the same or very similar to another customer we've done. There's your develop once, resell many times. So what are common tasks inside a SMB that we see today? Well, things like, what about a leave request, right? What about, approving invoices? All of this sort of stuff. There are common repetitive tasks inside all businesses that can be automated. Once you've done that, then you can offer that as a service or offer that as a product to sell. Now, the other thing to remember is, as I mentioned, Microsoft has the capability built into the console already to do migration. So if you go into the admin center here and you look under setup, then migrations, you'll see it can do email migrations, it can do file migrations, it can do Box, Dropbox, Google, SharePoint server, all that sort of stuff. The tools are already there. Now, do third parties provide additional value add on top? Absolutely. But again, the idea is to look at this and say, what can we do for free or that's included? And do we need anything extra? If you do, third party product works really well, great, but there is a cost to doing that. Rather than starting at the other end and basically saying, quick, get a third party tool, because that's just going to add to your costs. The smart operation here is, okay, what can we use for free? What can we get the most out of? And What are the things it can't do? Okay, that's when we go and invest in a third-party tool. So if we turn our attention to email migration being the most common facet, it's a commodity, right? Email migration is a commodity. There are so many people doing it. And again, third-party tools are out there which will automate the whole thing end for end for you. And you've got services that will do it end to end. But as I mentioned, don't overlook what Microsoft's already giving you for free. It's largely just going to be a lift and shift. You're not going to touch the data. It's going to go mailbox A to mailbox B, mailbox C to mailbox C. It's just going to move directly across. So again, where's the value add in migrating, moving data? Not a lot. You don't reorganize it. Okay, hopefully everybody here is comfortable with migrating emails. You've all done it before. And the idea here is that I'm telling you that there's a declining opportunity to make money out of email migrations. There's just not as many out there that require the migration, and the tools are getting so much better that the price is being driven to zero. So again, if you see email migrations as an opportunity going forward for your business, I would say you really need to consider that, because I can't see that being a growing market. It's going to be a declining market. Now, the reality is most people just move from an on-prem server to Office 365 and then they don't add anything else around it. Well, you can do things like archiving, set up the archiving. How long is data retained in a mailbox before it is archived off to keep the mailbox tidy? What about enabling litigation hold, the ability to recover data forever from mailboxes? Have you turned that on? What about data loss prevention, preventing things like credit cards, tax file numbers, invoice numbers, leaving the organization, sensitive information escaping? What about retention policies? How much is retained in the local OST versus what's in the cloud? What about compliance? Right? How much do you need to retain? How long do you need to retain? What industry are they in, and what are the requirements of the industry? So if you're in, the legal, or you deal with people in the legal profession, how long do they need to retain data for versus a doctor versus a mechanic? Right? What makes sense? Understanding that compliance is going to be a value add to the customer if you're already experienced in that. E-discovery is the ability to recover or find data inside your environment. If you haven't done an e-discovery search, you need to. You need to be able to understand how to use the tool, how to recover information, and search for that as an administrator, because you can get access to effectively every single piece of information that's in the Microsoft 365 environment. Using e-discovery, you can put it on hold so it's retained forever. Even if it's being deleted or changed by a user, you can export it, you can send it to third parties, you can recover it, you can do a range of things. But if you haven't started using e-discovery, make sure that you do. This tool's built in, it's already there, already available to you for free. And again, email security. Okay, so there is a whole raft of best practice configuration settings for emails, files, and so on that very few people turn on. Okay, you can do this and then automate it so you do it every single time to give you the most benefit and the most secure that you can. And the reality here is, think about, no one here hopefully would take a server out of the box, install Windows in a generic install, and then put it live on the internet. No one would ever do that. And they probably never do that on a customer side either. But that's what we that's what we largely see with Office 365 installs. People just not making any changes to the defaults. Okay, and that's just a recipe for disaster. And then we've got, all our reporting options. So for example, let me just show you, hopefully this will work. Oh, it might misbehave. Let's have a look. Actually, I didn't want to go there. I wanted to go to security. So let's just focus on the email side of here for a sec. Let's see if we can get this to behave. And let me just show you the capabilities that the reporting now gives you. So if I go down here and go to thank you, and now go to thank you, and now go to reports down here. One of the reports I've got available to me is my email collaboration report. Okay, if I go in and have a look at that, there's this mail flow status summary. Now, if I view that, you'll see in here that I get some pretty groovy stats. But then if I go into the funnel here, you'll see that it actually shows me the inbound emails. It'll show me the effect of each individual policy If I look at the tech view, it will show me, for example, things like demarc failures. All of this is built in with the product. And if we go back here, you'll see you've also got the ability here to create a schedule that will send you an email on a weekly basis of these reports. So again, all of this is built in natively to the product and just needs to be turned on once, but rarely do we see it. So again, think about the value add that you can add, and this is just for email. Okay, this is just for email. All right, so we're at time almost for a break. Let me just take a pause and have a look at any questions we've got. So the question about App Locker, please re-ask that during the security section. Again, all the documentation is available from Microsoft. Again, just do a search for App Locker on your interwebs, and I'm sure you'll find the answer to that question if you can't wait. I'm not going to recommend a version of router. Each and every person's mileage will vary. Speak to Ingram again about what they would recommend. Again, they're the ones that will give you help with infrastructure. How does a centralized and managed approach is used to patching or update? Okay, not quite sure whether that's a question. So the answer is yes. You can manage all of that using Microsoft 365 Business Premium. Okay, so migration from Microsoft 365 Home versus Business. If you're talking about the web services, I don't know why a business would be using Microsoft 365 Home. They should all be using Microsoft 365 Business. I've never ever come across anybody migrating from the home version to the business version. So again, I don't see it as an issue because again, I've never ever seen it. I'm sure it would happen once in a while, but again, it's relatively easy to suck the data out and upload it again. So there's no, I've never seen that and don't see a requirement for it going forward. How do you restore a OneDrive folder with many subfolders and files to the recovery point? So again, if you aren't familiar with the product, and my advice to you would be is to make sure that you go in and have a look at the product. But if I go into my OneDrive for Business or my SharePoint or whatever, in the top right-hand corner, you'll see a cog. All right, and in that cog, you've got an option there that says restore your OneDrive. So that's the sequence you would follow through to restore your OneDrive information. Are there any other questions before we look at taking our next 10-minute break, which is a little bit overdue? I do apologize for that. Any other last questions? Are we good to go? No, Adam, that doesn't restore the whole OneDrive. It allows you to restore specific items. So that capability I showed allows you to restore changes that have happened right over a period of time, and that could be an individual file, it could be an individual folder, it could be anything. And remember, you've always got the recycle bin, so data resides in the recycle bin. So the answer is you can always recover all of the information forever, right? With the correctly configured Microsoft 365 environment, you can recover all of the data forever, right? But like I said, it does require setting it up correctly in the first place, but you can definitely recover all your data using the inbuilt tools. Are there any other questions before we take our break? Oh, all right, so let me putting